And we have come to a set of chapters that is different from what we have been studying through the book of Isaiah, and it's different because it's actually a narrative history section. So Isaiah has been preaching and telling Israel, what they need to know from God, and so prophetic preaching, the future, and warnings about sin and so on. That's been going on up to chapter 35. Chapter 36, it suddenly changes, and we have a history lesson. 36, 37, 38, 39 are an historical interlude about King Hezekiah and the Assyrians. And then starting in chapter 40, we're back to prophecy, back to Isaiah preaching and prophesying. But the flavor, the tenor of 40 through 66 is different. It's a little bit more upbeat. And whereas the tone of Isaiah in the first 35 chapters was kind of like, you Israelites, you're not listening to me, you're not paying attention, you're not trusting me, you're not obeying me, and I'm going to be judging. That's kind of the tone of the front half of the book. The back half of the book is more like, I love you so much, and I've got big plans for you. And there's coming a day when I'm going to restore you, when you're going to be back in the land, and there's going to be somebody on the throne of David, and it's going to be wonderful. And it's talking, there's a lot of material in the second half, especially about the millennial kingdom of Christ. And it's not without warning slots. There are places in the second half where Isaiah feels compelled to come back to, I need to tell you, you've got to be right with God. So it's not 100% wonderful and so on, but there's a difference in tenor. So tonight we're tackling these 4 chapters right in the middle, and I'm going to kind of blow through these with some speed because there's a lot of material. So let me just read a couple of verses in 36, starting at verse 1. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem to King Hezekiah with a large army, and he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway of the fuller's field. So the Assyrian army has come to Israel, and they are threatening Hezekiah and Jerusalem, and they're saying, you need to surrender now. If you surrender now, we'll be nice to you. We won't kill you all. In fact, we'll give you a horse, and you can go to a place that will lead you to, not here. We're gonna take you into exile. You're gonna be moved a long ways away, and we'll give you a piece of land, and you can work that land. It'll be yours, but we won't kill you, and we won't destroy everything if you just surrender. And the officials of the Assyrian army are speaking in Hebrew, and the officials representing King Hezekiah are saying, please don't talk in Hebrew. We can understand Aramaic. Talk to it, because people on the wall were listening, and they were hearing the threats, and the threats are pretty dire, as in, you're going to starve, it's going to be really ugly, it's going to be nasty. And in verse 13, Rabshakeh, who's kind of the PR guy, and he shouts in Judean, which is Hebrew, and he tells everybody, don't let Hezekiah deceive you. And he goes on to say, if you say, down in verse 18, the Lord, that is Yahweh, the God of the Bible, will deliver us. Rabshakeh, the Assyrian, says, don't be deceived by that. He says, have any of the other gods of the nations rescued them? And of course the answer is no. All the other nations that Assyria has taken over, their gods are deposed, thrown down, and so on. And Rabshakeh is saying, your God is no better than any of the other gods. And in fact, his information is corrupted, because he says, hasn't this Hezekiah guy, hasn't he taken down the high places of Yahweh up on the hilltops and destroyed them? And we'll see he's wrong, isn't he? Because Yahweh doesn't want the high places. He wants worship in Jerusalem at the temple. So Rabshakeh doesn't have his information squared away. And he certainly has no true information about Yahweh. Well, in chapter 37, when King Hezekiah hears about this, he tears his clothes. What's that mean? Why would he tear his clothes? Great distress, grief, anguish, fear, confusion. And he covers himself sackcloth. He goes into the house of the Lord, and he sends word in verses 3 and 4 of chapter 37 to Isaiah. And he says, Isaiah, please pray for us. We're in a bad way. The king of Assyria is threatening us. He's got a giant army. No nation has been able to withstand him, and we are in serious trouble. Please pray for us. And Hezekiah himself is in prayer. And the Lord sends a message through Isaiah in chapter 37, verse 6. And he says, here's what you're going to do. Pardon me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him so that he will hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. And that is what happened. The king of Assyria went back to Assyria, and 2 of his sons assassinated him and ran away. Another son took over the throne. And Hezekiah gets a letter from the king of Assyria down in verse 14. And he takes the letter as another threat, saying, don't think that you're off the hook, because you're not. I'm coming back, and I'm going to get you. So Hezekiah takes that letter, goes into the courtyard of the temple, spreads it out, and says, God, see this letter? See what they're doing? We don't have any help except you. And that's his prayer, saying, verse 16 of chapter 37, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, who is enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God, you alone of all the kingdoms of the earth. And he says, see this letter, 17, 18, and in verse 20, now deliver us, give us rescue, help us. And Isaiah is sent by God, verse 21, to talk to Hezekiah, the king of Judah. And he says, don't worry about it. And I've got it handled. In verse 36 of chapter 37, the camp of Assyria, we're skipping a lot of material, but the Assyrian army is camped around Jerusalem, and there's 185,000 of them. And the angel of the Lord kills them all. In the morning, guys wake up and look out, and they see no activity in the camp. Somebody goes out to check on it, and 185,000 soldiers died overnight. Well, that was God. He took care of the situation. So God did do what he said he was going to do, which was to rescue Jerusalem from the Assyrian army. And he carried through on his promise, and Jerusalem was indeed preserved. Chapter 38, now this is interesting. If you look at chapter 38 and verse 6, 38:6, God says to Hezekiah, I will deliver you in this city from the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend the city. Well, now wait a minute. We just read about that. What is happening is chapters 38 and 39 are chronologically before 36 and 37. When the book was arranged, these 2 chapters were put after the events, probably as a segue into chapter 40, probably to smooth the transition into God saying, I'm going to comfort you, I'm going to bless you, and so on. But 38 and 39 are chronologically preceding by some time the events of 36 and 37. Understand? So, what is happening in 38 is Hezekiah becomes very, very ill. We don't know the nature of the illness, except it involved a boil, a sore of some kind, maybe cancer. We don't know what it was. But it was, in verse 1, mortally ill. He was going to die of it. And in fact, Isaiah the prophet came to him and said, you need to get your will certified, get things in order because you're going to die. And Hezekiah prayed, he called out to God, and verses 2 and 3, he wept bitterly. Verse 4, the word of the Lord came to Isaiah, and God says, I have heard your prayer, I've seen your tears, behold, I will add 15 years to your life. And so Isaiah is going to live 15 years longer than he would have. Now, God could have done all of that, but he did respond to the prayer of Hezekiah. God likes it when we talk to him and ask him for help. And that's what Hezekiah did, and God said, okay, 15 more years. And it's during that 15-year period of time that all the stuff with the Assyrians happened in chapters 36 and 37. And so Hezekiah writes a poem about his illness and recovery and his conversations with God about that. That is in verses 9 through 20. Isaiah came with a message from God saying, here's the cure. Put a cake of figs, apply it to the boil, and he'll recover. And so they put some figs on the sore, whatever it was, and he did indeed recover. 39, we'll take a few minutes to look at this. So chapter 39, we're still in the history section. Chapter 40, we'll be picking back up with the prophecy, but here's more history. And look at what it says. At that time, Merodach-Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he'd been sick and had recovered. Hezekiah was pleased and showed them all his treasure house, the silver and the gold and the spices, and the precious oil and his whole armory and all that was found in his treasuries. There was nothing in his house nor in all his dominion that Hezekiah did not show them. Then Isaiah the prophet came to King Hezekiah and said to him, what do these men say, and from where have they come to you? And Hezekiah said, they have come to me from a far country, from Babylon. Now pause for a moment. We all know Babylon, but at this point, Babylon is a smallish province in the great empire of Assyria. So when we think Babylon, oh, powerful, huge, enormous, well, it will become that, but right now, at this point, it's not. It's a province of the empire of Assyria. And do you see what's happened? The king of Babylon sent emissaries to Hezekiah. We heard you were really sick and that you got better, and we want to just congratulate you on your recovery. So that's what's going on here. We're going to pick it up again in verse 4. He said, what have they seen in your house? That's Isaiah. So Hezekiah answered, they have seen all that is in my house. There is nothing among my treasuries that I have not shown them. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and all that your fathers have laid up in store to this day will be carried to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. And some of your sons who will issue from you, whom you will beget, will be taken away, and they will become officials in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then Hezekiah said to Isaiah, the word of the Lord which you have spoken is good. For he thought, for there will be peace and truth in my days. So, the chapters 36 and 37, we see Hezekiah calling out to God and saying, you're our only hope, we trust you, Lord, save us. And God did. And we say, yes, Hezekiah, you got it, you nailed it. But now, what is going on?
Well, instead of him praying to God when he gets that message about what's going to happen and saying, please don't allow this to happen, he's saying, oh good, it's not going to happen while I'm alive.
Okay. So certainly there's some kind of an attitudinal issue at the end there in verse 8. There's a change of heart, okay. What else do you see going on in 39? What other issues with Hezekiah? So take a look at verse 4 when Isaiah says, what did you show him? Just asking. And he says, they've seen all that is in my house. There's nothing among my treasuries that I have not shown them.
They aren't his treasures, they're God's.
So he should know that. He should know that everything that he has is a gift from God and belongs to the Lord, and he's just a steward. He should know that. But instead, he's talking about my treasures, my house, my armory, my spices, my gold, my silver. You can just picture him, can't you, going from one room to the next with a Babylonian ambassador. And in here, I have 18 tons of pure gold. And then the next one, and here is perfume from the finest trees of Oman and Yemen and southern Arabia. And then here is 36 tons of silver, belongs to me. What is this? Pride, arrogance, misunderstanding of how he got it. He could have been born a beggar. You know, he could have been a pauper. And it's only God's design that he's a king. It's only God's grace that he's got any money of any kind. This is pride. This is arrogance. This is a misunderstanding. Have we seen this in other kings? A lot. A lot. Pride, arrogance, thinking that I have accomplished something when it's really God who's done it. And then at the end, when Isaiah says, so here's the deal. These guys that you just showed all your secrets to, they really liked it. They liked it a lot. And they're coming back. And they're going to take everything. And even your kids and grandchildren and so on, they're going to take them too. Probably because of pride. Probably because Hezekiah would not acknowledge God. And he did just a couple chapters ago. But now he's messed up. And so what do you make of verse 8? Sharon pointed it out. Hezekiah says, the word of the Lord which you have spoken is good. He says, blessed be the name of the Lord, it's all good. But inside, he's thinking, in my day, peace. Anybody know the name Neville Chamberlain? So he was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in the 1930s, and he did not want to start World War II. And so he went on, I think, at least 2 occasions and met with Adolf Hitler in Germany and made arrangements so that the UK would not go to war, say, over Czechoslovakia or over the Anschluss of Austria and so on, the annexation, and Alsace-Lorraine in France. And so he went one last time, Neville Chamberlain did, and met with Adolf Hitler, really begging for peace. And he came back and he got out of the airplane and was waving a sheet of paper and he said, peace in our time. Well, it wasn't at all. It turned into however many millions of people killed in the next 5 years. What is Hezekiah's issue here? What is his thought pattern?
Peace in his time.
Selfish. I won't have to fight. I won't have to watch the dissolution of my kingdom. I won't have to watch my kids be let off in chains. I won't have to do that. But he's not thinking about anybody else. He's not thinking about other people. He's not thinking about the next generation. He's not thinking about honoring God long term. He's thinking about right now and me. You'd like to think that leadership is always altruistic, always thinking of other people, always taking the long view. Not always. Hezekiah, even though he was largely a good king, he sure did mess up right here. This was a big mistake. What else do you see? Other things you see in the text? Okay, take your prayer bulletins, please.